Welcome to Blackbriar Gaming. In preparation for the new edition of Horus Heresy, Warhammer Community are going legion by legion, teasing us with rule snippets from the upcoming release. Today, we'll be looking at the 13th Legion, the Ultramarines. Just a quick note before we get into it, as we're a new channel, a subscribe and a like really helps us reach a bigger audience. So if you enjoyed the video, please hit those buttons down below. Now, the Ultramarines, aka the Smurfs, aka the most boring legion out there. No, okay. That's not fair. They've got this whole Roman thing going for them, which could be interesting, I suppose. I mean, it's not interesting, but it could be. Okay, I'm done. I don't need the comments full of hurt Ultramarine players. Look, they're not for me. Love the rules we've seen today. The Legion itself, not about them. They're very vanilla. I mean, every single one of us, we've all at some point created an Ultramarine army where we're a little ashamed of it. We don't tell people that often. I think I was 18 when I made my Ultramarine army. I was confused. I was young. I have regrets. I've never really talked about it. We're all out there, right? It's all one of our first armies, but they're so boring. They're so plain. The Heresy tries to make them a little interesting. So what does the Heresy do to make them a little interesting? Let's look at it. So when the Emperor finds Guilliman, he's not like all the other Primarchs. All the other Primarchs are struggling on their worlds, or they've conquered them, and they've overcome great brutality and hardship. Guilliman, he's just kind of chilling out. He's chilling out in this paradise of 500 worlds that he's just been given, essentially, while just all around him, the rediscovered Imperium is facing brutality and general horror. So look, it's that counterpoint, I guess, to the dystopian nature of the 30k universe, and that's kind of cool, I guess, if that's what you're into, fountains and stuff. And yet, amongst his legion of just full of ethical military strategists, great guys around, there's still just this spark, right? There's still room to just murder an entire population, an entire city, to prove a point to the word bearers. Just because, that's how they needed to learn. And there's that undercurrent there that they're still killers. They're still willing to do whatever they need to please the Emperor. And the Emperor can be a bit of a jerk. And Guilliman is right there with him. They do get a lot more interesting during the Heresy. So once the Crusade stuff is done and they're done being wonderful and helping everybody, except for the word bearers, during the Heresy, their rage is it's unleashed with this betrayal of Calth and this brutal warfare that ensues, this underground warfare once the surface of Calth is no longer habitable, and they're fighting through these underground mazes. And it's savage, and I love it. And it's a mess, and they get messy, and the rage is unleashed, and they get bitter. And that's when the Ultramarines start to get a little bit interesting for me. Guilliman itself, he starts his own Imperium, right? So it's his own little brand of heresy, accidental, if you will. There's a wonderful quote about it in one of the books. And he starts the Imperium Secundus, encouraging an invasion of Macragge by the Macragge. I'm going to go Macragge by the Dark Angels, which is great. They drop pod down. It's a great read, actually. Now, apparently, it wasn't Guilliman's intent to usurp the Emperor, but I have my doubts. I think it was always his plan. So look, there's some undercurrents there, some interesting themes of darkness behind Guilliman and his entitlement and why he thinks he's so amazing. So look, that's cool, that's interesting. In the biggest letdown yet by the Ultramarines, they never do make it to Terra in time for the siege, though arguably the pressure of their imminent arrival is what pushes Horus to make some dubious decisions that result in his defeat. But I mean, whoop-de-doo, Ultramarines, you can, tell the Blood Angels about it. They really care. So that's my thoughts on the Ultramarines. I'm sure there's plenty of fans out there. I'm no doubt going to cop some heat for it, but if I had to pick my least favorite legion, I think the Ultramarines take the cake. Look, they look great on the table. That blue looks wonderful, and their rules that we're about to get into are really nice. I'm very interested in these, if not so much Guilliman and his happy lads in blue. All right, so let's get into the rules. We got 2 rules today. We got their army-wide special rule, and we got their Rite of War. So the army-wide rule is called the Strength of Wisdom. It reads, when rolling and this is a mouthful, people. This is some convoluted rules writing. I'll give you the wording, and then I'll say what I think what we know it means in more simpler terms. So when rolling to hit for a model with this special rule as part of a shooting attack, add +1 to the result of the roll if the enemy unit targeted by the attack has already been the target of another friendly unit composed entirely of models with this special rule in the same shooting phase, and if the attacking model is within 6 inches of a model from that friendly unit. My goodness, that's one sentence, people. That's one sentence. This does not affect attacks made with the blast or barrage special rules, of course. So, what is that saying? It says that if you've got a unit and they're shooting at an enemy that another one of your units has already shot at, they get +1 to hit, as long as the models get +1 to hit if they're within 6 inches of a model of the friendly unit that's already shot at that enemy. So what we're talking about here is, lines of fire, units working together, a tactical squad and a heavy support squad, whatever it is, units working together to shoot at the one enemy unit, and the squad that shoots second gets this +1 to hit for all of the weapons that they're making a shooting attack with. Now, the +1 to hit is very powerful. We, of course, have seen pretty much the whole community declare that the Imperial Fist rules are slightly overpowered, and that is the +1 to hit on just some of the weapons of the Heresy, and not even really the strongest one when it comes down to it. The ones that you really want that +1 to hit on, which are your multi-melters and your las cannons and your melter guns and your this and your that. Those one-shot weapons, you really want +1 to hit on them, and that's not really what the Imperial Fists are doing. It is what the Ultramarines are doing, but with that really big requirement that comes with it. So this has the really big potential to have a huge impact on the game, or maybe none. It's going to really depend how you play your games and how you build your armies as well. It's very important to note that it's models, not units, which have some people quite concerned. And I don't think it's unreasonable that it is models. I think that's okay. It forces you to really think about how you're going to get the best out of this rule, how you're going to place your units, how you're going to support them, what units you're going to take as well. So you're going to really need to build your armies around it. Rhinos, drop pods, land speeders, and potentially rapiers are going to be very popular as cheap spotters for accompanying units. So your Rhino drives up, bunch of guys with melter guns pop out. The Rhino takes a shot first at the vehicle that you want to demolish, and the all those guys with the melter guns, as long as they're within 6 inches of that Rhino, now get the +1 to hit. We believe that's how it works. Same drop pod that drops in the back line. Bunch of guys with plasma guns jump out of it, and they unleash. But the drop pod shoots first at that elite infantry you want to destroy, and then the guys with the plasma guns, noting that plasma guns are AP4, but that's neither here nor there. They then get a go, and they get the +1 to hit, whereas the drop pods that shot first did not. Same land speeders, maybe they're moving around the side with a whole bunch of jet bikes with some great weapons on them. Land speeder shoots first, then the jet bikes take advantage of it for the +1. The rapier is in the back line with your heavy support squads with a bunch of las cannons. Shoot the one rapier first, which is 40, 50 points, whatever it is. And then you follow up with the las cannons, which are all getting advantage in a nice little formation next to this rapier or within 6 inches. So there are plenty of ways to make this work, but you have to really think about it. Also to note is that all these things I've talked about, the land speeders and rapiers at least, they're taking up force organization slots. Can get a bit tight in bigger games of Heresy, so I think Rhinos and drop pods, you're going to see a lot of them in Ultramarines armies to achieve what we're talking about here, and that's fine. And that's narrative driven, right? That's law. Everyone's riding around in Rhinos and drop pods in the Heresies. That's absolutely fine. Trying to get big blobs of infantry units to work in tandem to get the full benefit of this rule is going to get pretty awkward pretty quick. I don't think that's the way to do it. I think those small supporting units shooting first is the way to go. You also want those bigger units to be out there capturing and holding objectives, which is going to create a lot of conflict with this rule and unit positioning in general. So it's going to take a clever player to really make this work. High potential, needs some work. Clever players will really take great advantage of this. Some people will stuff it. And look, I'm sure everyone will have a game where it doesn't work, right? And you're going to get it a few times, but all in all, it's just not happening, whether because of you, because of what the mission's doing, or because the enemy has been canny and has shut down what you're trying to do. They're blowing up those rhinos, they're blowing up those drop pods. But also, if the enemy is shooting at your cheaper spotter units, then you're winning in a different way. So really interesting special rule, really like it, really high potential, maybe overpowered, who can say, but there's big caveats for it, and you're going to have to be pretty clever to get the best of it. We'll move on now to the Rites of War, which is it's huge. I'm probably not even going to read through all of it. Essentially, the gist is, Each turn, you get to pick a particular benefit. You can't pick them 2 turns in a row, but you have to pick one, is from what I understand there. So there's 4 of them. There's Full March, which means you move a little further, but you reduce your ballistic skill and weapon skill by 1, which is big. There's Hold Fast, which means, and this is all infantry unit types, okay? There's Hold Fast, which is the increase of your leadership by +1. It's big, that's important. And you may reroll, here we go, all failed to hit rolls during a shooting attack. What? Insane. That's insane. But here's the downside, and it's huge. May not move or run in the movement phase. Just none. None of your infantry in your entire army may move or run in the movement phase. Ouch, right? Next, Retribution Strike. All models infantry. They increase their weapon skill characteristics by 1 and gain an additional +120 charge roll. Fantastic. But reduce their ballistic skill characteristic by 1. So, ouch. You don't want to be shooting in the turn that you're doing that one. And then lastly, Regroup, which is it's kind of one you can throw out there when you don't want any of the downsides, because this one doesn't have one. So, infantry may reroll failed leadership tests to regroup. Sure, that could be handy while falling back, and any failed reserve rolls. That's really important. I'm not sure exactly what the reserve rolls are in the 2nd edition, but certainly in the 1st edition, trying to get a 3+ on a dice when you really needed those units to come down was a risk, and often did not come up. So that's really nice. Using these to the best ability where you're getting the most out of them, but not dealing with the downsides, is going to be a really tricky game. The rules here are intense. There's some amazing benefits and amazing flexibility. You're doing everything you want to be doing from a Heresy army in different ways at different times throughout the game. But geez, there's some downsides, and you're going to have to make sure you don't absolutely cripple yourself while using these if you haven't planned ahead and you don't really know what's going on in your game. Notably, it is only infantry, but it's all infantry. So I think some clever army building is going to really diminish the downsides here. You could either go all shooting or all close combat focused, for instance, with your infantry to diminish the downsides. But I think a flexible approach seems to be the better way to go, as you can't pick the same bonus 2 turns in a row. So I think you're going to want a nice balanced army that gets to, at different times, when appropriate, take the most advantage of these different rules. Working around the infantry word will be key here, so making sure you've got other types of units to achieve particular roles in those turns where you're suffering in other ways, such as cavalry or dreadnoughts. You need other things that are not infantry to be able to move, for instance, while you're holding the line, no doubt. I think transport's going to be really important in these Ultramarine armies, not just for those rhinos to be spotting like we talked about before, but from my understanding, if you hold fast for a turn, as long as your units that want to get up the table are in rhinos, well, they can still move, right? Because it's the vehicle moving, not the unit. So there's going to be some really interesting stuff that goes on with this Rite of War. I'm super excited about it. Honestly, I can't wait to see it happen on the table. Will I ever play an Ultramarines army? I'm going to say no right now. Geez, if I have to eat those words, that's going to hurt at a later date. But I can't wait to see Ultramarine players try and make the most of this Rite of War. It's going to be super fun to watch, and it's going to take a clever player. It's going to take some serious practice, consideration, and tactical gameplay to make sure you're getting the best from this, because you will shoot yourself in the foot the first time you do it. I have no doubt. So for that reason, really like it. The bonuses you choose are going to shift each game depending on your army, your opponents, the way the game is playing, and the mission. There's so many factors coming in here. It's very lore specific. What's what I'm looking for? It's very true to the lore of the Ultramarines and their theoretical and practical decisions that they're making, and the different tactics and strategies that they're all about. So super cool. Love it. I think it's really fun. It can be undone by a clever opponent that understands the options available to an Ultramarine player, and the opponent's going to want to overwhelm them at the right point in the game with a diverse range of threats is the way to get around this. So is it too much? I don't know. We'll wait and see. I think any rules like this that have such crippling downsides and that are so all over the place, I don't think they can ever be too overpowered, because so many things happen in a game and so many things can go wrong that an Ultramarine player is going to have to be thinking on their feet and have a lot of things to consider when choosing the right one here, and they will, no doubt at some point, stuff it up. And that brings us to the end of our Heresy chats for today. Thank you so much for watching. Overall, I'm really impressed with the Ultramarine rules. I think it's going to reward clever players and likewise clever opponents. Let me know what you think about the Ultramarine rules in the comments. Make sure to keep rolling those dice and getting hyped for Heresy.